So my name's Sean John. I'm a Chief Security Advisor for the UK and Nordics at Microsoft, and I'm joined today by...
I'm Carrie Murphy with KPMG. I'm a director in our cybersecurity group.
Yeah, so we thought we'd do a very small topic now, just to talk about protecting privacy in the cloud era, just a minor little thing people have got to worry about, and then obviously preparing for the general data protection regulation that's coming on. I don't know how many times people have heard the GDPR this week, 10, 20, 30? Yeah, but that's obviously because it is a major concern that people have got about how to actually comply with the regulations such as the GDPR, protect the privacy of customers and employees, but then at the same time make the best use of modern technology such as cloud. And that's one of the things that I spend a lot of time talking to people about some of the challenges. And it's about the fact that we're sort of changing the way that we do technology, we do security models, and at the same time the need to protect privacy has never been more important. I mean, arguably it's always been important. A lot of people will say how awful the GDPR is. I actually quite like it, because it's really just asking people to do what they should have been doing all along for many years, and now increasing the opportunity cost of doing nothing. So instead of choosing to pay the fine, you need to look at actually how you do things properly, and we should really be looking at how we protect the privacy of those you work with anyway. So one of the challenges we've got really is, if you think about this modern enterprise, I don't know if this looks familiar in terms of the traditional enterprise people have run, you've very much got the sort of hard shell model of security where you've got a firm perimeter, you put all your controls within that perimeter, you look after what's happening, any mobile devices have to connect back through there. You've got one point of control in which you can actually say, what are the policies, what am I going to do, and how am I going to deal with data? Now, one of the challenges we've got is that we haven't necessarily been very good at dealing with data over the years and at identifying what matters. So if I think about the conversation we have most with people around things like privacy and the general data protection regulation, is actually knowing what personal data people do hold, knowing how sensitive it is, and knowing what protections in place. Even in the traditional perimeter where you have controls. That's effectively, unfortunately now, that's not where all our data sits. Our data now is moving to areas because of the business drive to be able to engage with customers, empower employees, optimize operation and transform products. That's what's driving the change in the way that we run our organizations. So we've seen the adoption of software as a service. Some of that official, some in organizations that I've spoken to where they say, this is our model, we lock it down and we don't allow remote access. That's when you get a lot of the so-called shadow IT of people using sync and share, file sharing issues so they can work from home, forwarding things to their personal email, including customer data, patient data, very sensitive data. But you have this, so it started off very much a lot of it unsanctioned. Now it's approved cloud adoption, but your data isn't just sitting here now, it's sitting there as well. And then people don't really want to have a mobile experience where you have to connect back into the organization. You've got all these really cool tools, but you can't actually use them because you've got to go back through the organization and jump through a lot of hoops and not get a lot of control. So people want that first-class mobile experience. Then we've got the Internet of Things, probably the biggest connectivity issue, and actually, from a privacy point of view, sucking up so much more personal data, particularly in the consumer arena, around what people are doing, but then also medical devices being Internet of Things with very, very sensitive personal data being collected, and then connecting that into cloud services. So our traditional perimeter here of the network has sort of moved, and we've actually, the perimeter of modern enterprise needs to include all of these areas. So for us at Microsoft, that means identity really is that modern perimeter that you actually have control of. You can actually say, who is somebody, what are they doing, and what are they accessing, more than you can say, which system are they looking at. If that's a way of actually identifying. But you need to be thinking about security now in this full perimeter of modern enterprise. So in that cloud world, it's not just about what you can control on premise. It's not just about your devices. It's about your customers' devices, your employees' own devices, and whatever cloud services you use. There is some advantages to that, though. If you're going from the traditional approach to the cloud era, Traditionally, there's a lot of things you've got to do. You've got to do the responsibility, you've got to partially meet, very much a patchwork of what you're trying to do, trying to fit that into your security management model, but actually being able to ensure you've got control across the environment. In a cloud-enabled world, you still have responsibility and accountability for your security, but one of the good things about the GDPR is your actual cloud service provider also has some requirements they have to meet with. Pre-GDPR, you have an issue, you get pursued, you have to sue the person that provides you the service. Now the people providing you service actually have some requirements around what they can do. Doesn't actually let you off your own requirements, but it means you can use that security. And there's things you can do, like take some of the commodity responsibilities like patching and ensuring that systems are up to date, ensuring that you're running the latest version, ensuring that you've got the right controls. Some of the hardest, arguably easiest to do and yet hardest to operationalize in an organization can now be done by the cloud. And then you focus on looking at the cloud-based capabilities to give you some more effectiveness, to be able to know who's connecting from where, do things like conditional access, understanding how people are accessing, looking at policies. Actually, as you take your data from on-premise to the cloud, it's a really good chance to look at it and make sure that you know that you've got the right data, that it's classified and you've got the correct controls around it. And then, as you walk around the show today, and the Microsoft stand were the same, there's so much intelligence you can get out of the cloud services around seeing what's happening. You get much more insight into behavior, into access. Well, it's then about harnessing that to build some security controls. So actually, all of these can help you to put more protection in place around personal data. So people think about going to the cloud as a wholly negative thing. In fact, it's a chance to stand back, fix some of the errors we've made over the last 20 to 30 years, classify and control our data and put it correctly as it goes into the cloud. And obviously I've talked about the General Data Protection Regulation. I actually think it's a good thing. It's asking us to do what we should have been doing for the last 20 years anyway. It's not about the fines, although the fines are there to make businesses want to pay the fines rather than doing nothing. But the things it does actually bring in that you need to think about is the enhanced personal privacy rights, that increased duty to protect data, which goes to your cloud service provider as well, and things like mandatory breach reporting, so you actually have to tell people when something's happened, and then penalties for non-compliance. If we actually deal with it in the way it is at the moment, where it's a very information risk management based approach, talking about privacy by design and doing the best thing, then it's actually a positive thing that could increase the way that we do security and make things better, and actually help to do what it was designed to do, which is ensure that we put protection around the privacy of any data we collect about people. It's not, don't collect people's personal data, don't collect it, but once you have a responsibility to look after it and safeguard it. And there's many stories in sort of the cloud world now where people have collected data, haven't really thought about it, and we've had some issues, obviously, in the last month with Cambridge Analytica being one of the examples. So it's about security, but also about ensuring that we collect data for the right reasons. And if you actually look at that, GDPR is influencing some of the customer strategies. So it's thinking about the segments, the channels, thinking about what data you're collecting. Marketing and sales. I don't know how many people here live in the European Union. How many of you? How many emails on average have you had asking for permission to carry on collecting your data in the last month? I'm getting about 10 a week at the moment. So effectively all the marketing departments are going out asking for permission to collect people's data. But it is because historically people have been slightly lax and taken implicit consent to use people's data. You've got to now think about how you do it. You actually have to think, when I'm going to collect personal data, what's the reason for that? What's the impact on that personal privacy, doing some data protection impact assessments, and then actually thinking around some of the things we talk about around analytics, not just the security analytics from here, but around making things customer-centric, more insights, business insights. It's not saying don't do that, but do that with the appropriate level of protection and thought for what you're doing for people. So effectively in digital transformation, getting the best out of digital technology, but doing that with notice, with consent, with trust, and that's the core thing to all of this, making sure that you do what you do, building trust with organizations. So really, actually, the thing for the GDPR, we're going to go into a little bit more detail in a minute, but the core is simplify the journey. Think about your privacy practices. Think about what you're doing with the cloud. Work with somebody like Microsoft to understand how the capabilities we've got can help you to build a compliant environment. Uncover the risk. Don't do the ostrich sticking your head in the stand. Looking at what the risks are, taking some pragmatic approaches. And then for us, we're a technology company, so we can build our technology and our cloud services in a compliant way. We cannot make you compliant. We cannot do that for you. So it's working with people like KPMG to help you meet your privacy, your security compliance goals, look at it from a business perspective. So I want to hand over to Kerry to talk a little bit more about that now, if that's
awesome. Yeah, thanks. So how we think about this, right? So building on the technology, taking that customer-centric approach. Oh, sorry, I'm just gonna grab my notes here. There's some key elements to think about, right? We have 5 weeks and a couple of days before the enforcement date. If you haven't already thought about this, you're well behind in the curve. We've been talking with clients for well over 2 years about GDPR, building programs. And so how we think about this is really in the privacy framework, right? So building on the last kind of slide on the customer-centric model, having these elements in place for the short term, right? These are absolutely necessary within the next 5 weeks for that enforcement date. So depending where you are on your journey, right? Like I said, we've been working with clients a lot on the first 2 over the past couple years, the assess and design. Hopefully you have a lot of that in place and a lot of those models. And where we are now is really the implement and monitor stages. So how are you using technology as an enabler for your program? Are you understanding where your data is, how you're using that data, how you're protecting that data, and then monitoring over time? So these are certainly the elements now that we're having discussions with our clients. All right, we have a framework in place, we have a strategy. How do we now take this to the next level? So how we think about this is in our privacy management framework. So we look at 12 domains across a program. So, the standard things, policy standards, your governance model, to really meet the aspects of GDPR. But it's not only GDPR. GDPR is the hot topic item today, but there will be more in the future, right? You think about what's happened over the past couple weeks with Facebook, congressional hearings, that kind of stuff. How in the US we think about privacy is going to shift and change over the next few years. So using GDPR today as an enabler, you have to be compliant, especially, your customers, your employees, any of your employee personal data. If you have any European employees, for your company, you have to consider these elements. So we really take this model and this framework to help think about privacy and think about that lens and how to meet that compliance. I'd say that, most of the conversations we're having with our clients, it's a journey, right? We're not green on these areas across the board, but that's the goal, right? To get to a place where you can answer the questions being asked by your customers, by your regulators, going back to that, those 10 emails a week. It's funny, I don't have those emails coming in, so I wonder if there will be a shift here in the US similarly to kind of Europe and how they're ahead of the curve. And I like how that we have both perspectives here. Europe has been thinking about this for years.
I think we call it the last minute panic because the GDPR's coming in to get consent again. Yeah.
So really, taking kind of 4 key aspects, putting personal data at the center of your privacy strategy and program. Your customers, your employee data have to be at the center of that model. That aligns with your business model, right? Your customers should be the center of your business model. You should build your privacy and security programs the same exact way, because that just makes sense and then aligns from a business end-to-end model. Understanding that data is an asset and a liability. I had a conversation yesterday on e-discovery and the old e-discovery way, where you would just have a mountain of data and you can't really get rid of that mountain. So how do we selectively choose the data we keep about our customers, our employees, and obviously do the right things in privacy for those? don't rush into anything major just to meet that enforcement date. Don't go out and spend a ton of money. Really take a step back and align your strategy with your program and your long-term, what you want to do with your customers and that data that they have. And then just be prepared for questions, like I said, from regulators. They will be coming very soon. So just to talk a little bit about how Microsoft and us work together now. So we've built this kind of model together using our privacy assessment framework and building on top of Microsoft's technologies to really build a cohesive story, right? So as mentioned time and time again, you can use technology as an enabler to meeting GDPR compliance, but the ownership needs to be on those companies and on that privacy program to make sure you're doing the right things and implementing that model. So just to go through this, so like I said, we have our 12 domains using Microsoft's technologies, things like Azure Information Protection, the scanner, and then applying policies based on that. You could get a unique view of your data and your program and how that all fits together, right? So using that technology to understand how your data is being shared, used, collected, and I don't know if you have anything you want to say about the technology itself.
Well, no, just if you do go to stand here, we'll be able to talk you through some of the things you could do with Azure Information Protection. But then it's not just around that, it's around making sure you've got the appropriate threat protection, conditional access, risk-based access to make sure people are coming. We do also, if you're a small organization, we have a compliance manager which will allow you to tell you what Microsoft's doing in our cloud and sort of pre-populate some of the answers you need. So if you mention GDPR to anyone on our stand, they'll be able to talk to you about how our technology helps.
Yeah.
We'll be here after. But it's really key to us that we are able to build a technology and a platform. We're committed to making sure that everything we do is GDPR compliant, but then making sure that you're using it in the right way to achieve what you need, which is why engaging with a services company and using a proper framework to get that outcome is essential.
Exactly. You go back to that responsibilities matrix and it falls on you at the end of the day. The regulator is going to come to your company and ask how you're dealing with the data. You can't just say, well, Microsoft has it or any other provider. You have to own that piece of it.
Yeah. And so, please do come engage with us. We can talk to you around our capabilities. KPMG can help on discovery. The key is obviously that if you are doing any business with in the European Union, and you don't have to be based there, you just have to have residents of the European Union using your services, collecting data from them, this will apply to you. Yeah. But it is based upon basic principles of privacy by design and doing things right. So there's great stuff you can do. Please come talk to us. We're happy to help you get started. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.